Hello, Professor. So, our group will talk about genetically modified foods market distribution, presented by myself, Darshini, Divya, Darlene, and Zara. So, our agenda will be talking about the description of the crisis, the actors and interest, responsibility for the crisis. Last but not the least, we will talk about the predictions and recommendations. Let's now talk what is genetically modified foods. A genetically modified food is one derived from an organism, a plant, animal, or microbe that has had one or more of its properties being intentionally changed. Various methods can modify organisms, such as traditional breeding procedures. Modern biotechnology approaches include genetic engineering and gene editing. Genetically modified foods are becoming increasingly popular due to consumers' growing demand for healthier food options. Although supporters praise its ability to boost food output and improve nutrition, opponents question the safety, environmental effects, and corporate control of the food chain. Moving forward, let's now talk about the history. In 1866, an Australian monk produces two different types of peas and discovers the fundamental process of genetics. In 1922, the first hybrid maize is produced and commercialized. In 1940, plant breeders discover how to utilize radiation or chemical to randomly alter an organism's DNA. 1982, the FDA authorized the first consumer's GMO food created through genetic engineering. In 1990, soybeans, cottons, corn, papayas, tomatoes, and potatoes are among the first GMO crops to be made available to consumers. However, not all are still up for sale. In 2003, international guidelines and standards to assess the safety of GMO foods were developed by WHO and Food and Agriculture. In 2020, the application for Gulf Safe Pig was created. We will move on to the statistic. As said earlier, there has been a rise in the demand for genetically modified food. The GMF market value in 2023 was 109 million USD dollars approximately, while in 2033 it is projected to be approximately 196 million USD dollar, and this is as per the FMI 2022. The main economies growing GM crops are the United States, Brazil, Argentina, India, and Canada. For the European countries, we have Spain, Portugal, Czech Republic, among others, and in the African continent, we have South Africa, Burkina Faso, Sweden, with genetically modified cotton being the primary crop. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshini, for that insightful overview. Greetings, Professor. I will explore primary players and their interest. In the scope of genetically modified foods, three primary actors play key role. Corporations like Monsanto, DuPont, Bayer, Crop Science, and BASF are at the wheel, innovating GM seeds that exhibit traits for herbicide tolerance and pest resistance. This innovation is not just about enhancing agricultural productivity, it's about crafting crops that can withstand environmental challenges, a pursuit underscored by significant investment in the research. Parallel to these corporate joints, agricultural practitioners or farmers are the ones who bring these innovations to the ground. Their adoption of GM technology is a proof to the quest for higher yields and reduced losses from pests and diseases. By choosing crops that demand fewer resources like water and pesticides, they are not just cutting down on the operational cost but are also contributing to the environmental sustainability. Third one, regulatory entities encompassing governmental bodies and international agencies constitute the third critical pillar. Their role goes beyond mere oversight. It's about ensuring that the production of GM crops align with broader goals of food security, public health, and environmental conservation. Now let's shift the focus to the motivations which drives the GM food market. There are three interests that stands out. First one being the agricultural efficiency that tops the list, with the GM crops heralded as a solution to enhance yields and adaptability to suboptimal conditions. The next one is the nutritional enhancement, where the technology's potential to boost the nutritional profile of crops, like increasing the iron content in the rice, addresses global health challenges such as anemia. Lastly, environmental considerations highlight GM's ability to reduce dependency on chemical inputs and lower greenhouse gas emission, marrying agricultural innovation with environmental stewardship. Now, the landscape of GM food is also shaped by emerging enterprises and consumer advocacy. Startups like Pairwise and Brightseed are leveraging gene editing technologies to meet consumer demands for safer and more sustainable food options. Meanwhile, advocacy groups play a crucial role in molding the dialogue around GM foods, emphasizing the need for safety, transparency, and sustainable practices. On the international stage, the trade dynamics of GM products reveal a complex interplay of regulatory norms and consumer sentiments, with the key exporters navigating these waters to maintain their market presence. This concise exploration not only highlights the intricate interplay between the various actors and forces shaping the GM food sector, but also underscores the complex impacts of this technology on agriculture, health, and the environment. As we wrap up this segment, I hope the key points we have discussed spark further thought. Now, I'm excited to pass the baton to my colleague Divya, who will dwell in depth into who is responsible for a crisis.
Thank you, Zara. Hello, Prof. My name is Divya, and I will elaborate further on the responsibility for the crisis. First of all, global variation in genetically modified foods regulation fuels market uncertainty through lax oversight influenced by economic interests, leading to inadequate testing and transparency, undermining consumer transparency and confidence. While governmental prioritization of economic gains over public health and environmental concerns exacerbates distrust among consumers, with inadequate policies and stringent regulations hindering GM product distribution, ultimately limiting market access for producers in less regulated countries. Moreover, corporations and biotech firms worsen the GM crop crisis by prioritizing short-term profits over long-term consequences, fueling public skepticism through aggressive marketing and lobbying. Their dominance in seed production and distribution raises concerns about market consolidation and price control, underscoring the need for stricter regulation to ensure ethical and sustainable practices. Moving on, global trade dynamics favor multinational corporations, pushing GM crops into dominance driven by economic incentives rather than consumer preferences. Geopolitical pressures compel developing nations to adopt GM foods, disrupting local agriculture and disadvantage small-scale farmers. Additionally, the high costs associated with GMO product development limit access for smaller producers and developing countries, further reducing distribution diversity. The control exerted by biotechnology countries over seed patents and intellectual property rights significantly influences the distribution of GM foods. Patenting of genetically modified seeds allow companies to monopolize the market and restrict farmers' access to traditional seed-saving practices. This control over seed supply chains further consolidates the dominance of GM foods in agriculture markets. Furthermore, the scientific community and industry influence also shape the distribution of GM foods. While some scientists advocate for the benefits of GMOs in addressing food insecurity and agricultural challenges, others raise concerns about their long-term impact on biodiversity and ecosystem health. Industry-funded research and lobbying efforts have influenced public discourse and policy decisions, impacting the distribution of GMFs. Farmers' adoptions of the GM foods and agricultural practices also influences their distribution. Economic incentives and promises of increased yields drive some farmers to cultivate GM crops. However, concerns over seed dependency, environmental damage, and socio-economic impacts lead others to reject GM foods, affecting their availability and distribution in local markets. Lastly, consumer demand and perception influence the distribution of GM foods in the market. Despite concerns about the safety and environmental impact of GM foods, consumer acceptance has grown in some regions. This demand drives the expansion of GM foods distribution channels, further entrenching their presence in the global food system. Now, my colleague Darlene will elaborate further on the future and recommendation of GM foods market distribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Divya. Now let's talk about the future of genetically modified foods. The world consumes 11 billion pounds of food every day, which is expected to grow by 70% in 2030. The practice of genetically modified foods has been existing for a very long time. It dates back to 1,000 years. Brinjal, that is eggplant in Bangladesh, and papaya in Hawaii was almost extinct due to a massive pest attack. Genetically modified foods came as a savior by not only protecting the crops from pests, but also conserving the environment, as such crops require less pesticides. Around 18 million farmers are using GMO as they are herbicide tolerant. GMOs also increase the yield and help preserving the farmland. They check soil erosion, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They also reduce the need of pesticides by 37%, which has also increased the profits of farmers by 68%. GM technology would lead to increased harvest as well. GMO lasts longer, that offers a potential solution for food security, and food crisis. The benefits are that plants are genetically modified for their need for becoming resistant to pests, diseases, or environmental conditions. Or genetically modified foods can also produce certain nutrients which are either never produced before or produced in a lesser percentage in plants. Crops that are genetically engineered, they have a better taste, and the quality is better as the crops are resistant to certain pests. The overall maturation time is reduced while yield per hectare is really increased as well. If we talk about meat, animals, pig, chicken, genetically modified animals, they become more resistant to several illnesses. That increases the productivity of the meat, that increases the amount of protein in the meat. The meat quality is improved, the quality of eggs and milk is also improved, and most importantly, animal health is not compromised, which is also subsequently improved. However, there is always danger with GM foods, as there are several side effects of consuming GM foods which can lead to health problems. Apart from this, GM foods means more use of herbicides in the future. There was there is an element called RBGH, which is genetically engineered and is injected into cows for better production of milk. However, it has proved that it can lead to breast cancer, prostate cancer, and other severe diseases. And some genetically modified foods can also create resistance to antibiotics. So if you're taking any medicines, they might not have any effect on you. So this is it. Now, as we know, the future is very much certain that we are going to have a lot of genetically modified food items in the future. Now, let's talk about how to control these adverse side effects that possess life threat and other diseases that come from genetically modified food items. First of all, if a country is concerned with if it is related with the production of genetically modified food items, they should follow a comparative approach by which they should identify the potential threats in a genetically modified food by regulating agencies in those organizations. And any research and development information that has been obtained by such research should be reviewed properly, and action should be taken in case any risks are identified in such food items. This way, we can really reduce the amount of stress that comes with genetically modified food items, and it can also result in increased productivity and quality of the foods that we consume. I hope this clears everything. I hope genetically modified foods is clear now to everybody who is watching this presentation. Thank you so much, Professor, for giving us this amazing opportunity to talk about it. Next slides show references that we have taken for this presentation. Thanks again.